Hello folks, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. In this video, we will be discussing a topic on non-constitutional bodies and the recent issues surrounding it, so that it might be a possibility to come in the mains question. This topic is a part of your mains series. Alright, this video is presented to you by your faculty Sushma KP. Now let's get the video started. First, we will be discussing as to what are the topics that we will be discussing today and on what areas specifically we will be discussing. First, we will be seeing as to what are non-constitutional bodies. Then we will be discussing what are the types of non-constitutional bodies. What is the difference between your constitutional and non-constitutional body? We will be seeing an overview and example of statutory bodies, regulatory bodies, as well as your executive bodies. We will also be bifurcating these statutory bodies, regulatory bodies, and executive bodies into financial and your non-financial but non-constitutional bodies. We will also be discussing the recent criticism of each of the associated bodies, what could be the possible way about. We will also be seeing some of the judicial pronouncements that has been given to deal with this non-constitutional bodies and issues associated with this. Finally, we will be seeing one mind map of the entire issue. Alright. Hope the course is clear how we are going to take today's video. First and foremost, what is a non-constitutional body? Understand it this way, previous video we have did on constitutional bodies. If you haven't seen, check that out too. Now when we say a non-constitutional body, it's as simple as it states, something that is not mentioned in the constitution. Understanding, if it is mentioned in the constitution, it is called a constitutional body. If it is not mentioned in the constitution, and if that body exists either because of an act of parliament or executive order, then that is called a non-constitutional body. Alright. Now, what are the types of non-constitutional body? A non-constitutional body can be created either by an act of parliament, which will be called as a statutory body, or a non-constitutional body can be something which is created by an executive order. Understanding, which we will be call it as a executive body. But both your statutory body and your executive body all coming under your non-constitutional body. So the so-called body which is created derives the power and authority from where? Obviously because of the act that it was created from. Understanding? So it takes power, its roles, functions, etc. from the particular act which created it, be it with respect to parliament or state legislature. What are the examples of your statutory body? See, here we will be discussing what are the statutory bodies, under what acts were they created. Your NHRC, National Human Rights Commission, was created through your Protection of Human Rights Act 1993. National Green Tribunal, created by National Green Tribunal Act of 2010. National Commission for Women, created by your National Commission for Women Act of 1990. Your Central Information Commission, created by your RTI Act of 2005. Lokpal Act of your Lokpal and Lokayukta Act of 2013. And for your National Commission for Protection of Children Rights, it was under an act of 2005. Alright, so these are an example. So where exactly do you think the power of NHRC comes from? The power of NHRC comes from this particular act. Understanding? Look at this. Now, in the same non-constitutional body, we have something called as a regulatory body. What is a regulatory body? Which means their whole point is to regulate a particular sector and enforce the laws for that particular sector. What do I mean? For example, let's take your insurance. Your IRDAI was set up to make sure that uniform streamlining growth, everything happens with respect to insurance. Then comes with respect to your SEBI, understanding? Then is your TRI, RBI, UGC, University Grants Commission, understanding? These are all regulatory bodies with respect to finances, with respect to insurance, with respect to education. Clear about clear? Now, there are something called as executive bodies. What are these executive bodies? Again, like I mentioned, these were created not by an act of parliament, but by an executive order. More of consider it like your government created this. Understanding? First is your Niti Aayog, which was created to replace the Planning Commission. Okay, then is your National Security Council. The present National Security Council advisor is your Ajit Doval. Then is your Zonal Council. Then we speak about your wildlife protection. Then disaster management. Okay, these all have their respective statutory acts. Understanding? Now there is something called as executive body also. There is something called as a statutory body also. Clear? Next, what is the difference between a constitutional body and non-constitutional body? First, let us see from the source. Constitutional bodies mentions powers etc. are coming from the constitution, whereas for a non-constitutional body, it's either by the act of parliament or by an executive order. Few examples are, for example, like UPSC, Election Commission, CAG. There it is your NHRC, SEBI, Niti Aayog. Autonomy of your constitutional body is very high compared to the autonomy of your non-constitutional body. See, today's video we will be discussing about what are the controversies or issues related to your non-constitutional body. One of the main issue is coming from this only, autonomy. Constantly the criticism that we see is that it is the non-constitutional bodies are not able to, or they are subject to political pressure. So they are not able to function as independent bodies. Understanding? Now, we will see a few examples of your statutory bodies. What are the issues associated with this? First is your NHRC, National Human Rights Commission. Look at this. I think now the board might be clear for you. Okay. The first statutory body we are taking with is your NHRC. As the name states, National Human Rights Commission. So it deals with cases that has human right violations. Understanding? What is the criticism? Look at the word here. Toothless tiger. Why is it dubbed as a toothless tiger? Now, understand when I say about NHRC, it might be a non-constitutional body, but the selection committee, be it the members you put into NHRC, they are coming from a very high zone. What do I mean by that? NHRC was created by your Protection of Human Rights Act of 1993. SHRC was also established under the same act in the states. Okay, statutory body. Clear now. What is the composition of your NHRC? If you see, it's a chairperson and 5 members. It is a multi-member body. Often, it also has ex officio members as your members of National Commission for Women, National Commission for backward classes, and also your protection of child rights, and also your Chief Commissioner for physically disabled. Yes, all of this is there. Now, the important aspect when I told that it is a very important or coming from high level committee, the appointment of this is a non-constitutional body mind. Usually for all the constitutional body, appointment is made by the president. For the central level and in the state level it is by governor. But this, even though being a non-constitutional body, they are appointed by the president in the central level, and in the state it is by the governor. The selection committee for the members include Prime Minister, Speaker of Lok Sabha, Deputy Chairman of Rajya Sabha, Leader of Opposition of Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, and your Home Minister, that is a Cabinet Minister. Usually it will be your Home Minister. Whereas the same, if you see with respect to your state, it is the Chief Minister, Speaker of your Legislative Assembly, Deputy Chairman of your state legislative council wherever applicable, leader of opposition, and your home minister, usually council of ministry. Do you see the number of people coming from such a high level committee who are appointing, that is, who are in the selection and appointment is by the president? Now they should be given also a large number of powers. What powers? See, NHRC does not function like your criminal procedure code. Understanding? They work more on the principles of natural justice. Understanding? Now, if you have created such a high power body, then you should also give them powers. Now, with respect to your NHRC, it has the powers of a civil court. It can ask for inquiry, documents, yes, all those summoning, etc. is there. At the same point of time, it regulates its own procedure. It requires government aid for investigation and also staffing, funding, etc. One thing is, you are creating such a high power body, you're giving almost the same power like the appointment of a constitutional body, the president, high powered committee, etc. All this is happening. And let's say they undergo all of these things, and whatever recommendations they give to the government, it is merely recommendatory in nature and not binding. So, what is the exact power here? Also, it doesn't end here. If you see the jurisdiction, they can only inquire into cases which have happened within 1 year of occurrence. Understanding? Now, this becomes even more difficult to deal with on a larger ambit. Again, another issue is, we said, the funding, etc., is all dependent on the government aid. Constantly, there is under more of your lack of funding, and also the staff, personal management, etc., is also very inadequate. It is not enough. Understanding? And they cannot award compensation, and they cannot take in cases, like I said, which are more than 1 year old, and their powers are furthermore restricted when it comes to your armed forces. Understanding? So when we saw in the previous slide, it is considered like one of the criticism is it's a toothless tiger. Now do you see how it is? You give all the majestic things such as high powered committee, etc., and yet there is no power. That is exactly how it is happening with your NHRC and SHRC. Okay. The next other statutory bodies that we will be discussing is your Central Information Commission and Lokpal. With respect to Central Information Commission, say especially aftermath of your RTI, right to information, where they wanted to bring in much of transparency, curb corruption, bring in good governance. Your CIC was meant to ensure transparency under your RTI. But your 2019 Act furthermore reduce the independence. Understanding? And just look at this, I will be explaining it in a little while. The Supreme Court has held that, see, for a body which is going to maintain transparency, and you are curbing the transparency of that body to operate independently, then how does you, or how do the public have trust on this institution? The public trust gets corroded. Yes or no? Another thing is, initially it was given high powers equivalent to that of a constitutional body. When asked the government, why are you restricting the powers of this body? The answer that the government gave was, see, it is a non-constitutional body. The powers doesn't have to be equivalent to that of a constitutional body. Understanding? Then another, let's say, a statutory body which was brought in under so much protest, understanding, was your Lokpal. It was brought under Lokpal and Lokayukt Act of 2013. It was appointed after lot of public pressure, people movement, understanding. Until 2019, it was not set up. And one thing, if they have observed, one of the major criticism that is associated with this is, almost in 2023, if you start seeing, the cases that have been disposed of are very negligible. The CAG has been flagging concerns over this. Now, we will see for your Central Information Commission and State Information Commission. Both are statutory bodies created under RTI Act of 2005. The composition of your Chief Information Commission is a Chief Commissioner plus other members. The other members is up to 10 Information Commissioners. And same with respect to State Information Commission also, it is Chief Commissioner plus other commissioners. That other commissions can be up to 10 members. Now, the appointment is again by President. The selection committee is by Prime Minister, Leader of Opposition of Lok Sabha, a Union Minister or a Cabinet Minister who will be nominated by the Prime Minister. With respect to State Information Commissioner, he or she is appointed by the Governor. The selection committee is again the same Chief Minister, Leader of Opposition, and also a State Minister nominated by the Chief Minister. Again, here also, do you see that it's a high-powered body which has selection committee, which involves heads of states in the executive, and you are reducing the independence of these bodies, which is in turn impacting them to be independent. So meaning what? What was observed with respect to CIC, etc., was CIC or SIC. By curbing their independence, a lot of political pressure was exerted, which means they stuck up or they got under the ambit of executive control. Understanding? Even though it might be a non-constitutional body, but you are using a high-powered committee to select. Then that means, see, one of the main things we saw even for your NHRC or your CIC, SIC, one of the main criticism that we can here analyze is lack of independence, lack of funding, understanding, and clear-cut powers are not set in rules, functions. Next body, that statutory body that we will be seeing is your Central Vigilance Commission, which was body created under Central Vigilance Act of 2003. This was set up based on the recommendations of your Santanam Committee. If you see the composition, it is Central Vigilance Commissioner plus other Vigilance Commissioner, that is maximum up to 2 Vigilance Commissioner. They are also appointed by the President. And if you see the committee, selection committee, it is Prime Minister, Leader of Opposition and of your Lok Sabha, and your any Union Minister appointed by your Prime Minister. Their tenure is 4 years or up until they complete 65 years of age. No further reappointment in the government services. This is your body of your CVC. Again, one more issue that came with respect to your CVC is that is Central Vigilance Commission. See the name itself, Central Vigilance Commission. Something that has to deal with your corruption, whistleblower protection. But because of the lack of independence and further dilution of powers, as well as no strengthening backing receiving from legislative process, and also no holistic whistleblower protection, the more of public trust on these institutions is steadily getting corroded. Understanding? The next is your regulatory bodies. Now, when we say a regulatory body, specifically we're mentioning is for them to flag off concerns, or they have to regulate a particular sector so as to make sure that in that particular sector. Now, when I keep telling sector, let me give you an example. SEBI. Okay. Now, your SEBI, the whole point it has to regulate is your capital markets. This became, okay, the work that the body is there itself for that. This became controversial recently with regard to SEBI is with your Adani Hindenburg issue. Understanding? Where the SEBI was accused of oversight failure. Your whole point is regulation of this field, and how did you miss upon this? Understanding? This led to a lot of market fluctuations, and also your Supreme Court appointed an expert committee to overlook and more of overlook in the sense, see what is SEBI's role exactly. Understanding? Next is your TRAI, Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. The whole point is regulate the telecom pricing and your competition. Recently, the controversy that was brought in was, say, a TRAI is supposed to be a body wherein, again, strictly it is regulatory, not be in favor of any particular company or any particular person's interest. But it was showcased, again, it is here we are using the word alleged. Understanding there was alleged bias in favor of certain players in the period of 2016. The alleged bias was somewhere with the entry of Geo and all of those. Okay. Then next is your UGC, University Grants Commission. See, one of the whole point UGC was set up was by your Ministry of Education is in to streamline the process, to bring things, to give more autonomy to universities. But the criticism, if you see, it is for over centralization, lack of autonomy for institutions. It is the one which will help in controlling the higher education, funding for your universities. Understanding your NEP 2020, okay, if it has to be in line, there is a suggestion to dissolve UGC. Further down, we will be seeing in detail of your UGC. Next is your RBI, which is a monetary policy regulator. Again, one of the prestigious institutions we can call RBI as. One of the issues, or let's say the criticism, was during your demonetization time. So your Supreme Court held that RBI's role is what it is doing. There is no issue or any controversy with the role it played. But it more of said that RBI should have been better prepared for demonetization. Understanding? Now, let's see in detail what are the criticisms with regarding to your UGC. Like I mentioned, it was for streamlining the process with respect to higher education, give more autonomy to universities, but it went ahead and eventual controversy that we are now speaking about is over centralization, bureaucratic delay, and limited autonomy to university. It countered for what it was created. So much so that the proposed, let's say, this is not yet tabled or this is not yet signed. They are claiming to dissolve UGC completely and in its place bring your HECI, that is Higher Education Commission of India, and this has to be brought in under four verticals, which are NHERC, which is for your regulation, NAC is for accreditation of universities, HEGC for grants, university grants, GEC for curriculum standards. So they thought within this body also we will further create bifurcation, so it will not lead to over centralization like how it is criticized with respect to your UGC. Understanding? This is yet to be passed, and once this is brought in, once UGC is dissolved and HECI is brought in, then it is said to be in line with your NEP 2020, New Education Policy or National Education Policy of 2020. The next things we will be seeing is with regard to your executive bodies. One of the first bodies when we say executive bodies that will come into mind is your Niti Aayog, which is a think tank and which was brought in to replace the Planning Commission. Planning Commission was having and wielding a lot of power, fund allocation, center states and all of those things, but that power was taken away from Niti Aayog. Okay, it is considered more as a think tank and not as a fund allocator. Initially, the whole point why Niti Aayog was brought in was to bring in cooperative federalism between your center and states. Understanding? So, your Niti Aayog was brought in keeping mind of federalism. But if you see the recent issues or criticisms that is associated with Niti Aayog, is that it is almost acting as a for, or it is more of a continuance of your central government. When you're outright taking a stance on your central government or let's say any one particular government, then how can you foster in the spirit of cooperative federalism and be open to listening from both ends? Understanding? So its ability to promote cooperative federalism is questioned. Okay? And look at this. And also with respect to your Niti Ayog, majority states are feeling like the Niti Ayog is trying to bring in the center's view on the states and not the vice versa. The other executive bodies are, for example, your NDMA, National Disaster Management, which was formed under, again, statutory body, which was formed under a DM Act, that is Disaster Management Act of 2005. The criticism that was associated was the COVID-19, or see, during your COVID pandemic, no one could be prepared for that. Yes, we can give that much. But the whole point of your disaster management is to be prepared for any further. And sending, look at the keywords I'm using here. See, no one could predict your COVID-19 pandemic. But one of the main roles of your NDMA or National Disaster Management is to make sure that you be future ready for any such things. So when this was not met, the questions were raised as to how exactly are you future ready for anything that might come. And also criticisms associated with how they have been handling landslides, floods, droughts, etc. have also been questioned to an extent. Alright. Next is your National Board for Wildlife. The issue that is associated here is largely they cleared some projects, that is, give environmental clearance in ecologically sensitive areas, and it was done through your virtual meetings. This raised criticism and controversy as to how exactly have they seen the effects that it does on your ecologically sensitive areas. The next we will be seeing is your financial institutions, but which are non-constitutional in nature. First thing is Finance Commission versus GST Council. Now, when we are going to speak about Finance Commission, GST Council, all of those are your constitutional bodies. Okay. Now, see, with respect to one particular case, let's take Mohit Minerals case and all. In GST Council, your judiciary stepped in and told, see, GST Council should not be made to be specifically set foot binding and then made sure that yes, everyone has to obey to it. It should be more of your recommendatory in nature, and all those features came in. Here we spoke that we will be speaking about the financial bodies, but which are non-constitutional. See, these are, let's say, your Finance Commission or GST Council. These bodies are, even though constitutional, they have certain limitations where, with respect to your recommendatory nature, non-binding nature. Now, when we see the other financial bodies such as NABARD, SIDBI, okay, all of these, your Exim banks, these are all something which are equally strong operational in that particular sector as well as non-constitutional. Understanding, we will see further of this in with respect to your GST Council. Look at this. Your GST is a constitutional body which was created under your 101st Amendment, Constitutional Amendment, inserted under Article 279 of A, wherein the chairperson will be Union Finance Minister. The members or the composition is chairperson, he is the Union Finance Minister, and also Union Minister of Finance, and other members are your state finance ministers or any other ministers nominated by the respective states. So this has to be again towards your cooperative federalism. The question again there comes is, your states want a greater say in the GST Council. Now, if you see the voting mechanism in your GST Council, decisions are for your 3/4 majority. Center's vote is 1/3 of the weight, and states' vote collectively put together are 2/3. Despite this, your states are claiming that the GST Council, and also one more criticism, if you see in your GST Council, during your post-pandemic, the center had to yet pay the compensation for the states. Okay, that was also one of the criticism that came to be highlighted. And also states want increased share not just in voting but also in respect to decisive matters. Now, we will see particular institutions and more of the issues that they were associated. SEBI was associated, or the recent criticism was with respect to your Adani Hindenburg report. Then is your Central Information Commission, that is your RTI Amendment Act, which was further diluting the powers. NHRC, again here constantly we see delay in appointments, lack of representation, non-binding decisions, lack of ability to award compensation. Your UGC, again UGC because of its over centralization, no autonomy to your universities, and wanting to create HECI instead and completely dissolve UGC. Then is your wildlife board, environmental clearances during pandemic. Yes, we can agree that there was a pandemic, but because it involves such ecologically sensitive reasons, this crept up as your controversy. Then with respect to your Lokpal, again ineffectiveness, lack of complaints being disposed, and also the autonomy is further reduced. Then NDMA, your Disaster Management Act, the lack of future preparedness strategy. Understanding? So on the whole, if you see what is judiciary, see we're not pointing at any one particular body and telling this is where the issue is. On the whole, if you take it for the non-constitutional bodies, judiciary in Anuradha Basin versus Union of India, see constantly, right? There is a lot of internet shutdowns that keep happening. Hmm. In this case, the role of TRI gets questioned. Yes, which led to Supreme Court stepping in and mentioning about your internet freedom and how TRI had to act in an independent manner, understanding, rather than succumb under your executive pressure. Then is your Common Cause versus Union of India, where it has been held that it is very important for independent regulators to maintain that autonomy in decision making. Then in PUCL versus Union of India case, again, it was about your independence of NHRC, which is extremely important if that body has to do the so-called work it is supposed to do. What are some of the ways or reforms that can be done in order to go ahead? First and foremost, uniformity in appointment and removal. Okay, it should not be varied to the disadvantages. Second thing is, greater autonomy has to be given. Large amount of accountability has to be put upon them, so that, why we are telling accountability should be put upon them, so you cannot put accountability on them without giving more of your autonomy. Accountability can only be put on them when they are being given sufficient autonomy, understanding. So if for this to happen, this is the only thing that will develop the trust in your people's mind, understanding. Another thing is have a parliamentary oversight on this, understanding, and also transparent selection process. This reduces the ambit of corruption and also favoritism, or any possibility of being under the favors of your executive control, and also strengthen performance audits for these particular bodies. Okay. So, in summary, if we have to discuss about this topic, non-constitutional bodies are either statutory, regulatory, or executive bodies. They are either created by an act or an order. Few examples are your NHRC, SEBI, Niti Aayog. Controversies are with respect to each of them. We have discussed with respect to your Adani Hindenburg, and also we've spoken about your virtual clearances of your wildlife, right? Wildlife board. Then with respect to the judiciary claims that for the non-constitutional body, first thing you have to do is give sufficient autonomy and leave the body to be independent. Unless and until you give autonomy, you cannot ask for accountability. Unless and until you do not have accountability, the body cannot perform for what it was. Then that will not have any, or the public trust in the body starts to get reduced. Understanding? So this is it with respect to your non-constitutional bodies and recent controversies surrounding this. If you like our content, subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, share it along with your friends. Thank you.